It is absolutely no coincidence that all great leaders are also great storytellers, and storytelling is at the heart of communication. Leaders understand that people respond to stories when it comes to engaging people, inspiring them, and bringing in change. Hello and welcome. I'm Garima, and joining me on the dais today is Mr. Rehman Akhtar. Currently, Mr. Rehman works for the Management and Professional Development Department at Saudi Aramco Oil Company. He is part of a team that develops their young professionals to be the leaders of tomorrow. He has had a lifelong passion for all aspects of the field of communications, whether that means training people to fulfill their true potential or indeed traveling around the world to host events and perform stand-up comedy. Thank you so much for joining me today, sir.
Hi, Garima. Greetings from Saudi Arabia, where I'm very, very happy to join you today. What a lovely introduction. Thank you so much. I should just point out right at the very beginning, though, that although I'm an employee of Saudi Aramco, I'm not really here in any official capacity to represent the company. So I can't talk about things like the business plan or any operational matters. And any opinions that I express in this chat are all mine, not the company's. But that said, I'm really happy to be here, and I'm so looking forward to this chat. Have been for quite a long time.
Sir, let's begin with your story. You have had such an unusual and unconventional journey. Tell us about it. How has it been for you?
Yes, yeah, well, a good first question. I certainly, sometimes have to pinch myself when I think of my story, and I take myself back to that, the little kid who was born in a small town called Sialkot in Pakistan. Small but very influential town, because that's where the World Cup football is made. Did you know?
Right.
We're very much a sporting town. We have a lot of sports goods manufacturing there, and I, can't believe that the journey that I've taken from there to sitting today speaking to you from Saudi Arabia in Dhahran, the headquarters of Saudi Aramco Oil Company, which is in effect the largest company in the world, and certainly the largest energy company in the world. So it's been quite a journey. And as you said, it's been a non-conventional journey. I went to live in London at the age of 4. So pretty much my formative years were there, my sort of basic education. I went to the City University in London and studied mechanical engineering. That was really more for my dad than me. As you know, all Asian parents offer 2 choices. It's engineering or medicine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, given my choice, maybe I wouldn't have chosen that subject, but really it was to make my dad proud of me. And I hope he is looking down and being proud of me now. But I discovered very early on that I have a passion for people, for communications, the arts, and pretty much soon after leaving university, I also left the world of mechanical engineering. And then kind of worked my way through a non-conventional career, landing in things like financial services, the insurance sector, and even I was an entrepreneur for a while where I ran my own businesses and also ran my parents' business. But I soon settled down into the world of IT. So I became an IT consultant, starting in the help desk area, ended up with the executive help desk actually in cable and wireless. Before that, I worked for the Royal Bank of Scotland. And through all of these twists and turns, eventually I became an SAP consultant, a SAP consultant, as some of you might know it. And I was offered, I moved from Pearson, which is the world's largest publishing company, to GlaxoSmithKline in London, which is, as you probably know, the world's largest pharmaceutical company. So I'm going around collecting employment periods in the world's largest something. So I've worked for the world's largest publisher, the world's largest pharmaceutical, and now I'm working for the world's largest oil company. So I was offered the opportunity back in 2001. Gosh, what is it? Long ago is that? Almost 20 years ago now, that I had the amazing opportunity to come out and work in Saudi Arabia. for Saudi Aramco as an SAP consultant. And this was the largest implementation of SAP in the world. So what an amazing opportunity.
Right.
But at that time, to completely change your location, I'd been living in the UK for more than 30 years at that point. So I never thought that I would be making a life out here in Saudi Arabia. But here I am working for this company. So lots of twists and turns, as you said.
Yes. And sir, I would like to know how these formative years, your childhood, has deeply impacted you, and how would you say your childhood played an integral part in shaping your career?
Absolutely. I often think about my adventure, my journey in life, and think that I'm actually an ordinary person who's been blessed with having an extraordinary life. Part of it has been through luck, part of it has been right place, right time, talking to the right person, and part of it's been just through my sheer hard work and wanting to do things, having a passion for things. So my childhood really was growing up as an immigrant, a child of immigrant parents. I myself was an immigrant, and I'm the eldest child of 4 children. So my brothers and sisters were all born in the UK. I'm the only one born in Pakistan. And it's a cliche that children of immigrants do seem to have to work a little bit harder and struggle a little bit more because of that particular label, that background. And I did find myself in extremely difficult situations, having to work that much harder to establish myself in the world, in London, and getting on. My saving grace was that I learned the language really quickly. So I went into a remedial class, which was all Indian/Pakistani students who didn't speak English. And we were meant to stay in that class for a year. But I took to the language so quickly that all the books that we were meant to read in a year, I read them in 6 weeks. And I improved my language so quickly, they threw me out of the Indian/Pakistani class. So I found myself in a completely, class full of English kids, native English kids. And then I guess helped my language even more. And I did spend a stint as an English language instructor later on in my life. So it's amazing how things go full circle, But my childhood really established my many aspects of my current personality. The love of communication, the love of whole networking, and being very strong about your ambitions. Go out and get what you want to get, because no one's going to do it for you.
Right. Absolutely, sir. And sir, now tell us about your current role in this organization and what inspires you to go for it, and what keeps you so motivated, so high on energy about this role. We would love to know about that.
Energy's always been part of my life. I cannot do things without energy. Here I am. It's a weekend here in Saudi Arabia, because our weekend is Friday and Saturday. Right. You know what? For me, I work a 7-day cycle. There's no such thing as a weekends or weekdays. If I go back to the beginning, as I said, I started my life as an SAP consultant. But in my almost 20 years in the company, I've done a very diverse number of roles. So I've worked in IT side of things. Then I joined training and change management, and I became a certified change management consultant. I worked within the organization consulting department for about 11 years before moving into what I'm doing currently, which is part of management and professional development. It's part of the HR organization, our human resources. So the specific division that I work for is Career Development Division. All these names are very self-explanatory. We're all about careers, helping young professionals. And the specific group that I work in is the Graduate Development and Onboarding Group. So we directly help our young professionals, especially those on the Professional Development Program, which is a 3-year program we run for our freshly recruited graduate trainees. And I'm in a very blessed position to be able to influence those people and to help them become amazing professionals in the first 3 years of their life. So I do things like the actual new hire orientation. I will then do workshops towards the end of their training period. It's called the Career Transition Workshop, where we look at how they'll transition into that. And in between, we help them with career guidance. And they say a lucky man is one who gets a job which is his passion, because you never need to work again. And I am blessed to be in that position, that I love my job. I get up with a bounce in my step every morning, think, yes, what's today holding? And so I'm in that position right now, and I'm loving it. Helping young people run
Amazing,
professional.
amazing,
Yeah.
sir. And so now people are at the heart of change management, right? And you are somebody who's very passionate about this subject. What do you think about the skills that one actually requires to, deal with people and convince them to move in a particular direction? Because that's a very, very specific and a very difficult and a unique situation altogether.
Indeed.
Not everyone can do that.
Wasn't it Charles Darwin, I think, who said that the survival of a species depends on their ability to adapt to change, correct? So
Yes.
it's not the fittest and the strongest who survive. It's the ones who are most adaptable to change. So I would definitely say to your viewers, your listeners, that that innate ability to handle change. Life is not linear. It's a series of ups and downs. And, we all go through a little change curve when change happens, and it's very, very famous. It's published all over the place. I think Elizabeth Kubler-Ross did a lot of work in this when she looked at the change that people go through in a time of grief, for example, bereavement. And so it goes all the way from shock and denial to slow, gradual acceptance. But what we have to do as people is to understand the nature of change and to know that something that feels like a disaster today may actually be a blessing when you look back on it. Now, I've had many, many periods in my life, and I've learned this through experience, that sometimes when you don't get a certain job you're chasing, when something doesn't come out exactly as you want it to plan, you know what? The man upstairs had another idea for you that you don't know about, right? And then you walk down the road in your life and you think, aha, that's why that happened, because this opportunity was waiting for me. So I would urge, especially the young people listening, that life is about coping with changes, being resilient. And of course, this current uncertainty we're having, it's the resilient people who are coping better, right?
Right.
So I would say that's a huge talent and a huge skill that people should definitely look at developing. So,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely, sir. And
Mhm.
sir, if I may ask, if you could share some of the moments that have redefined your life, the struggles you have been through in your personal journey that have made you who you are today.
First of all, it's very important to say that, everything that happens in your life, whether it's good or bad, makes you who you are right now.
Right.
It makes you. Okay. And so growing up in the UK, when I was a youngster and growing up on a housing estate or a complex where I was one of the only brown kids on the block, it wasn't easy, and that was a very, very troubled time in my childhood where I had to kind of stake my claim for, my independence and get through that period. And it was a very frightening period because in those days, there was a lot of racism out there in the UK, and it was very in-your-face racism. And I'd often get beaten up, just for being brown, and this was part of life. But I think back on it now, and the steps that I took, which maybe I'll talk about a little bit later in this chat, the steps that I took led me to an amazing trajectory in my life as a result of that bad experience.
Right.
So definitely I feel that as you go through adversity, and the famous saying again is that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? I personally feel that is so true. That is so true. That you've got to grit your teeth and say, look, there is something on the end of this path, and I will get through this. I
Right.
think a big asset to have in those periods is a network. And Harvard did a study on happiness a few years back. And I don't know if your users care to Google that up, the Harvard study on happiness. And they followed Harvard graduates through many decades of their life. And they found out that the ones who grew up as happy, content, balanced people, there was one trait in common with all of them, was they had great personal relationships. They had great networks. So don't try to handle these periods by yourself. Lean on friends, because those people are going to take you through.
Absolutely, absolutely, sir. And now taking this point further,
Mhm.
if we have to talk about the importance of networking in this industry we are in, how
Mm.
would you help our audience understand how important and valuable is networking in this professional space?
It's one of the top skills you have to have, because I believe that, for example, if you want to get good at a skill, you've got two options.
Mhm.
Study by yourself, go put your nose in books and just try to learn everything yourself, or get mentored.
Right.
How do you get mentored? You network. It's as simple as that. And of course, we know the famous 70-20-10 model,
Mhm.
which I actually tell a lot of my young professionals in my workshops, is, and this is industry proven, industry accepted, that learning and development happens along rough scale of 70-20-10. 70% comes on the job when you're actually handling projects, you're project managing things, and you've got your hands in the actual job, practical. 20% comes from your interactions with people around you, mentoring, getting mentored, those kind of interactions. And only 10% comes from the classroom type environment or e-learning or anything else that we do. So it's very, very important that that 20% that comes from mentoring is a very fruitful relationship. And I've been mentored all my life. I've had mentors since I was a teenager. Of course, we're born with mentors, really, aren't we? Our
Right.
parents are our very first mentors. But I would say, if I put an estimate, even now, currently, I have about 10 mentors. Now, they can be formal, they can be informal. My youngest mentor is my 14-year-old son. There are things he teaches me.
Yeah.
I actually have paid mentors, and I have informal mentors, which are just people around me. But at any age, at any part of your development journey, your career cycle, you can be mentored. And the one and only way of being mentored is to network effectively, whether that's through social media, something like LinkedIn, on Facebook. Well, that's just for old people now, isn't it? No young person is on Facebook anymore. That's what I hear. But so I'm one of the older people on Facebook who are still networking, and of course with people around you. So I
Right.
think networking is a huge skill, for
That's
sure.
such an important point, because we are learning every day through everyone we are connecting, right? And
Indeed.
now, sir, talking about your unusual journey, talking about stand-up comedy, how did that start, and how has that shaped you into the individual you are today?
I can't seem to have a conversation without this topic coming up, because, yeah, stand up comedy has been an enormous part of my life. It's been an enormous part of my self confidence building. So I touched upon it earlier that when I was around kind of 9, 10, 11, growing up in this environment in the UK, there was a kind of a depressing side of my life, and that there was a lot of physical violence. And I soon took a decision. I took a decision at the age of 11, actually, that I wasn't going to be a punchbag anymore. I wanted to show them that I was more than just this little brown kid they could beat up every time they saw us. So there was a local talent contest. And even in those days, I could tell a really good joke. I could make people laugh. So I thought, right, I'm going to go up there as a stand up comedian. And yes, at that age, I stood in front of 300 people in my local talent contest in London, West London. And lo and behold, I won. So
Wow.
all 6 judges gave me 10 out of 10. So I thought, I'm onto something here. And believe me, for me, that day in December 1974, I even remember the month and the year, was a huge turning point in my life. But I had no idea what an amazing adventure it would lead me to. Because not only was that a confidence building measure, something that I found I could do, I had a talent for, but it helped me with so many other things. So university, I was the president of the Indian Society. I was the president of the Flying Club, and public speaking has come very naturally to me since then. Um, and through the world of comedy, I kept performing, and I was very lucky to be picked up by the BBC on one of the live shows that I was doing. So I did some shows for them, got to meet some amazing people, um, Om Puri watched one of my
Wow.
performances. Can you
Wow.
believe that? And I remember standing backstage after my performance, and Om Puri had just done his interview, and he came backstage. He tapped me on the shoulder, and he put his hand out to shake my hand. I said, "Oh my God, Om Puri wants to shake my hand." He says, "Beta, you were wonderful."
Wow.
So it just led me to this amazing adventure of this crazy. I mean, I've performed with Russell Peters from Canada, and I've performed shows all over the world, and even in here in Saudi Arabia, I've had a career in stand-up comedy, and been to Africa, and even in the war zone in Afghanistan, I performed there as well. So stand-up comedy, whether it's been on TV, live shows. I've got a show here called Rehman and Friends, which is on became a YouTube hit, and lots of views there. So I'm pretty well known in this region as one of the pioneers of stand-up comedy. Because when we first came here, there wasn't really an English-speaking comedy scene here. So I thought, why not? Let's make halal comedy.
Wow.
You just have to keep culturally sensitive. All
Yes.
right. So
Yes.
that was the thing, that they didn't want the Western style comedy where anything goes. And I realized that very early on. It had to be family friendly comedy. And
Right.
because people felt very safe coming to my shows, because I used to tell all the other comedians, listen, you might be coming in from Dubai or Bahrain or wherever, and I know that over there you can say whatever you like, but this is Saudi Arabia, and it's my name on the show, Rahman and Friends.
Right.
So
Right.
I really produced those shows to be very family friendly shows, and they worked. It was an amazing period in my life, and I had a lot of fun.
You have been to different parts of the world, exposed to different cultures. How would you explain that experience?
A lot of my humor is based on culture and language and the diversity, because I wanted to do shows for mixed audiences here.
Right.
And we as a company are a hugely diverse company in many ways. So our employees come in from around the world. So I wasn't just playing to the local audience, although they did form a lot of my audience. We did the shows in English because operating language of Saudi Aramco is English, and that was a common language, obviously. But we had audiences from all backgrounds, all religions, all cultures, all ages, and that was amazing, because then we could play on so many stereotypes. So a lot of my humor comes from my personal experiences of a Pakistani Brit, having been born in Pakistan, grew up in UK, and then now living in Saudi Arabia, and all the parts of that that make me struggle with, all of that. But I make my comedy very inclusive. I don't just pick on one culture or one religion or one, and there are obviously many topics that we have to stay clear of in
Yes.
this, and religion is one of them. We tend not to touch religion, but it's been amazing fun. It really has, and
Wonderful.
culture plays a big part of that.
Yes, yes, sir, absolutely. And now talking about diversity and inclusion in the larger scheme of things and in the bigger picture, how do
Mm.
you look at this subject? And if we talk about your current organization, what are
Mm.
some of the steps they are taking to make the environment more inclusive, more diverse?
You know, we could possibly do an entire separate interview on this subject, because, of course, it's a very hot topic
Right,
right now.
right.
So, for example, I can say that Saudi Aramco are committed to be the best place for diverse talent to work. There is a huge commitment on that. And having worked in the company for 20 years, I only have to look around at the number of people that work here alongside me, from South America, from North America, Europe, Far East, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. We're an extremely multinational company. And diversity and inclusion in our company, really, our main focuses are gender diversity, people with disabilities, cultural diversity, and generational diversity. And of course, D&I can include a lot of other areas, but these currently are the focus that we're having in our company. So the first thing to say is that D&I is very much a key strategic initiative for us in our company. And in fact, the current strategy that we've got, which has just been renewed, it was approved by our strategy council, which includes our chief executive officer, only about 4 months ago, back in February 2020. And D&I is actually a very much a high business priority for us as we look to transform our organization even more into not just a local role model, but a global role model. So
Right.
what does that mean? There are lots of big words there. But what we're effectively saying is that through education, for example, because a lot of D&I work is around awareness, education, breaking down those stereotypes. And we have been doing courses in our company for, I would say, intensively since 2010 in this area. We have a whole separate team within our company that focus only on D&I strategies and implementing it. So we have e-learning, we have webinars. In fact, I got an email just yesterday from the D&I team saying that we've got a whole series of webinars coming up. We have face-to-face sessions which are given to so many diverse employees to explain the background of D&I. We also have outreach outside of our company, because one thing you've got to realize about Saudi Aramco is that our sphere of influence is not just within our little company, where we may be we're a company that our influence goes out across the kingdom as well, and that we try to do something, take part in the development of the kingdom, not just our company. So we like to affect, for example, safety and all of these good qualities we want to get out there. So D&I very much, we outreach, we link with partner organizations, external entities to do the right thing with them. One example of this would be the STEMania campaign that we ran some time ago, where we were filling the pipeline, if you like, for young girls especially to be involved with STEM subjects. And now we're renewing this whole strategy and saying, well, what's next? So it's a very exciting area. And I talked earlier about the generational diversity. So we value our young people. We actually have something called YLAB, which is the Young Leaders Advisory Board. So instead of just ignoring their opinions and their desires, we actually put them into a board. And those Young Leaders Advisory Board members, and this is a role which they do for a year, and then the committee is rotated, they advise right up to our executive level. So they have an influence on so many projects. And also our mature generation who are getting ready to leave the company, we have extensive knowledge transfer programs so that we don't lose the knowledge they bring. So there's a lot of work going on in this area. Right. That's a short answer.
Yes. And sir, what would your message be for the young women out there who are seeking a career in oil and gas industry? How would you welcome them? If you had to talk about this industry to them and convince them that this is the place to be, what would you tell them?
I often say in my workshops, because our workshops often now have a lot more women within my company than used to be the case even just 5-6 years ago. And I tell them it's a great time to be a woman. There are lots of opportunities being presented, especially our company is trying to put a lot of female employees in leadership positions. So for me, I would encourage them to come into the oil and gas industry. Very much it's a sphere which offers great opportunities. Energy is going to be at the heart of the world economy for quite some time, despite a lot of other negative things. And of course, we're shifting in a lot of directions at the moment, and going to electrical cars and things like that. But there are very, very worthwhile and excellent careers in the oil and gas industry. I would say to the females that I know that sometimes the chips do feel like they're stacked against you, right. But I seriously feel that there is a growing recognition of the role that females can play in this area. I was privileged to be at the IPTC conference just a little while ago, International Petroleum Technology Conference, which was hosted by Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. And I was very, very happy to see 50% of the people that came in were females, and very intelligent females at that. If I think back to when I did my mechanical engineering degree, I graduated back in '87, I think we had 3 girls in the class of around 60 to 70 people. Guarantee you go back to my university now, you'll find a lot more females there. So the tide is turning. And yeah. Sisters, get out there and get what you need. And there you go.
That's a very
Absolutely.
powerful message, sir, for them.
Absolutely.
And now, sir, I will talk about the current times. These are very uncertain times. The industry
Mhm.
has not seen anything like this before. The world has not seen anything like this before. How are you looking at this particular situation? And how has it changed your personal life and also in terms of your professional journey? How would you comment on this?
Uncertainty has been a constant part of my life. Change has been a constant part of my life. So, really, while I was just as surprised as everybody else when the pandemic hit, there we were in December last year, even towards the end of December, never having heard of COVID 19. And now it's on everybody's lips in the entire globe. It's affecting almost every single industry. And I feel that my life has been a training course for these last 6 months. And different people, I mean, back to Charles Darwin, it's those people who can adapt to change. So,
Right.
to answer your question more specifically, I think the business life, we've all had to pivot. That's been another word in everyone's lips, that having to pivot very, very quickly to this new environment. So, for example, I used to do courses face to face. Now I do a lot of my training online.
Mhm.
So I present now to, sometimes I have a class of 40, 50 or more people online. We've had to go to this new environment. So my work life, and I generally tend to work from home at the moment, has been, I'd say, challenging, but we as a company, I think, have pivoted very, very quickly. So
Right.
operations are as normal. And in fact, I could say that I've taken on more skills during this period of now being able to host online, webinars and training courses. I've learned new skills on the tools that I use. Personally, it's been tough. I can't say it's been easy. I mean, it's not easy being away from your families, your loved ones. And I have family all over the world. My kids are in the UK and other parts of the Middle East. And the most commonly used expression between me and the kids during these 6 months has been, "It is what it is." You know, that's what Daddy always says. That it is what it is. Let's make the best of it. So I focused on a lot of things which I used to say, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for that. I've I've made time for those now. And one of them has been my health and fitness.
Right.
So I train every day. So I literally cannot remember the last time that I didn't do some physical exercise. I did my exercise this morning when I got up, and it's had a great effect on my general health and overall energy that I have. So, what better time to take care of things that you thought you didn't have time for?
Absolutely.
Spending time talking to your relatives
Right.
that you haven't contacted for a while. And self development, I feel, is something else that I've had time to read, I've had time to take on new skills. So, that's the difference it's made. And again, I think I always have a very positive outlook, and I've used that to my advantage now. And of course, I've been watching lots of good stand up comedy.
Wonderful. I can feel the energy, sir. And also, I remember having a look at one of your posts on LinkedIn where you talk about your weight loss journey. So
Mm,
tell us about it, because it is definitely extraordinary and a
wow.
huge effort on your end. We would love to know.
There's something in my life that when I achieve something, there's something inside me says, "Ah, share this, share this." So maybe there's someone out there who has the same problem. So try to maybe influence other people and I'm very influenced by other people. So the typical thing: you go, you see a friend who you haven't seen for a long time, and you say, "Hey, wow, you've lost a lot of weight," and suddenly you say, "Well, how did you do it? How did you do it?" And you feel inspired. I felt that I wanted to inspire other people on the journey I've been on. And it's been a very stop-start thing for me. But overall, from my peak a few years back, I've actually managed to lose 20 kilos so far.
Wow.
Which is, for those of you in old measurements, I would say that's about 44 pounds, just over 40 pounds.
Well,
Um, and I have another 10 kilos to go. So I'm doing really well. During the pandemic, I've lost another, of that 20 was about 3 or 4 kilos. It's just
wow.
been in the last month, actually.
Wow.
So I have found a formula that works for me. I found what I needed to do to lose weight. And it's maybe it wouldn't work for someone else. So you've got to find that. I'm even thinking of doing sessions for people online and saying, look, guys and girls, here's what worked for me. And
Amazing.
here are the key things you need to keep in mind when you're going on a weight loss journey. And it's not just about weight loss, it's about
True.
inner feeling, how happy and healthy you feel. So don't just focus on the weight loss. That would be one of my biggest pointers to anyone listening to this who has struggled with weight. Don't just make it about weight.
I
It's,
am one of them, sir. So
well,
I am
let's talk
definitely,
through
I am definitely going to be a part of that webinar whenever you decide to
Well,
organize that.
I
Count
am
me.
I'm seriously thinking of doing one soon because so many people reached out to me after after that LinkedIn post that I thought there's a lot of people out there who need to be helped. And if I can just pass on any of my knowledge and experience, I'd love to do that. So I'll keep you informed, Garima.
Yes, yes, please. And now, sir, what is your message for the class of 2020? They are very confused, overwhelmed. A lot of things are going on at the moment. It's a lot
Mm,
to take in for them.
mm,
What would you tell them? What should they focus on right now? And what are some of the skills the industry is actually looking for?
mm. Great question. Great question. First of all, right now, work on your resilience. This is a period for resilient people. And don't let the current environment around you get you down. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Yes, Rahman, it's easy for you to say you're sitting here working for the world's largest company, you're in a stable job, but things are very stressful here. I get that. I've been in very, very stressful situations in my life in the past, and I get it. Now, what you've got to be focusing on is the bigger picture. COVID-19 will end, all right? We had the Spanish flu around the Second World War, which killed 50 million people. It ended. All
Right.
right, we had a new world after that, but COVID-19 period will end one day. So what you are doing right now will equip you for that new world. If we look at the World Economic Forum report on the future of jobs, they typically give you the top 10 skills which are required for corporate environments. And if you look at the 2015 survey that the World Economic Forum did, the top, let's say, 5 skills were, and I happen to have them in front of me: complex problem solving, coordinating with others, people management, critical thinking. Now, fast forward only 5 years. In 2020, the same survey by the same organization, the top 5 skills were complex problem solving, again, that hit number one again. That's a skill that you should definitely have. Critical thinking moved up from 4 to 2. Get this though, creativity went from number 10 to number 3,
Hmm.
right? What does that tell you? Now the managers want people who can think creatively. And by the way, number 4 and 5 were people management and coordinating with others. So the top 5 stayed pretty much there, but there was a huge difference in that creativity going from 10 to 3. So the general message I'm giving to young people here is look at the skills of the future. You need to be well-rounded individuals. So life is not just about work. Learn to understand the world around you. Listen to the news regularly, read topics which have nothing to do with your subject. If you're a petroleum engineer, don't just read about petroleum engineering, but read about the world around you. Because companies like Saudi Aramco, when they hire people, they hire them because they're whole people, holistic people who are mature, who can do things like critical thinking, who've got networking skills. Increase your communication skills, work on your communication skills, your vocabulary, and how to link with people. Join Toastmasters, great organization to help you with public speaking. Do some public speaking. Get used to presenting in front of people. And then when you do get into a corporate position where you have to stand in front of a senior vice president and give a presentation, you're not going to think, oh my God, I'm going to go hang myself. You will say, right, I'm going to do this. You should
Right.
have the confidence. So bottom line, please take on more skills than just your industry. Artificial thinking, artificial intelligence, machine coding. There are so many areas where you should be looking at getting just some basic knowledge. Social media skills,
Right.
wonderful skill to have.
Right. Right.
That's my key message to young people now, the class of 2020.
Yes, yes, sir. And what do you think about soft skills and emotional intelligence? What role do these skills play when it comes to career development, and not just in this industry, but in general? What do you think about these
Mm,
particular skills?
incredibly important. Emotional intelligence. I would say that emotional intelligence is probably more important than IQ, intelligence quotient. So I know lots of people with a very high IQ, which when it comes to making a sound judgment decision, kind of struggle.
Right.
So it's and how do you get emotional intelligence? In that mentorship is one way, but getting through situations where you've really been tested and you stuck to your values. So having high emotional intelligence is all about figuring out what your values in life are, I believe. And for me, um, my values are very, very much along the lines of integrity, always doing the right thing. You get so many choices in life that you feel that, will my integrity be compromised if I go this way instead of that way? So I agree with the sentiment of your question, and I think it links to the last question and the answer I gave, which was life is not just about technical skills.
Right.
It's about having those emotional skills, and knowing yourself as a person, self-efficacy, as we call it in career guidance.
Right.
And it, you don't always know yourself at 18. You don't really know yourself in your 20s. I feel I probably stabilized around my early to mid 30s and really knowing who I was in life and where I wanted to go. So it comes eventually. It comes eventually.
Right, sir. And sir, I would like to ask you, if we go back 30, 40 years down the line and you would have to reintroduce yourself to an organization, how would you introduce yourself?
Hmm. I think your elevator pitch is which I believe you're asking for kind of changes throughout your life, doesn't it?
Yes,
Throughout your life.
yes.
Um, and so, my one record is that I've never failed a job interview in my life, and I've done a lot of them. And I think that when employers are interviewing you, they're looking for the genuine you. They're not looking for you to oversell yourself. So that's one thing I would definitely not do. Employers, on the whole, don't ask trick questions in interviews. They're not looking to trip you up, but they are looking to find out what makes you tick as a person. So anyone looking to go into their professional environment, I would say be yourself. If you're asked a question which you genuinely is not your field, one huge tip I can give you is an employer is very impressed when you say, you know what, I really don't know this area. It's just something that I haven't specialized in, and I don't want to talk about an area that I honestly don't know. That's much more impressive than if you try to make up an answer, because you can trip up very quickly.
Right.
So they're looking for energy. They're looking for someone who is enthusiastic about their future, who's passionate about what they're going to do. Now, I know it's not possible to be passionate about every single job you apply for, but that's another tip I would give youngsters now, that not every job you take is ideal. However, if you can do it with passion anyway, if you can grab that opportunity, you don't know what you're going to learn from that job. So, in my student years, when I was at university, I worked for McDonald's, I worked for Burger King, I worked for Harrods, the amazing store in central London, in Knightsbridge. I worked at Selfridges. I worked in so many diverse organizations and in retail business. I did so many jobs which someone would look at, what are you doing? You're studying mechanical engineering, yet you're doing, but I learned so much from those jobs.
Right.
And even today, the interpersonal skills that I've got of talking to people are from diverse backgrounds, I would say the origins lie in those jobs. So I would say pick any opportunity. If you're an engineer and you happen to be sent to a very remote location, take it. It's okay. You're going to learn.
Yes, yes. And how would you help them cope with the whole environment of judgment coming from friends, relatives? As you said, people did
Mm.
question you, right? What are you doing and why are you doing this? Having a degree in something else, doing something else. It's very difficult, especially with the kind of traditional and very, conservative background we have in India. What would be your message for the students coming from
Mm.
these families and environment?
Sit down with your parents and watch Amir Khan's movie Tare Zameen Par. That would be my first piece of advice to you. And then the next day, sit down with them again and watch Three Idiots.
Wow.
Right? So make a note of those two movies and watch them with your parents. In fact, I believe that Tare Zameen Par has become required viewing for
Yes,
teachers, trainee
yes,
teachers in India.
right.
And I know what you're getting at. In India and generally in Pakistan as well, in the Asian subcontinent, Indian subcontinent, we have a quite a judgmental kind of view, and I think it comes from this desire for parents. They have a desire for their children to do the absolute best that they possibly can. However, the downside of that is they put a lot of pressure on kids. So a child who would love to become, an artist, a performer, a journalist. It's not kind of seen as a high status as something like an engineer and a doctor. And I can understand where that comes from. But I think as we move into this 21st century, we've already gone into, 20 years into the 21st century, and our thinking should move
Right.
along with that. And there are so many role models out there, so many examples of people who have made amazingly worthwhile careers in subjects other than science subjects, that we should now open our minds a little bit. And the final thing I'd say is that your life is a canvas uh, on which you paint. Others are not going to paint for you. So you decide what you want to do with this life, because we only get one chance, right? And like I said, ordinary people living extraordinary lives, and I'm very blessed to be one of them.
Very inspiring, very inspiring, sir.
Thank you.
And now, sir, we young people are very vocal about our thoughts, about our ideas, and how we are dealing with the current situation.
Mm.
But it is not the same with the senior leaders and executives like yourself. I would like to understand, how are you coping with the situation? We have discussed some of it by now. And how would you advise the senior leaders and executives out there? How
Mm.
would you help them get through this time?
There was a time when you could do this top down structure of leadership, and it worked. So there are still organizations in which that kind of structure works. Uh, Military, you can't have leadership by consensus in the military.
Right.
It just doesn't work. However, more and more corporations are realizing now that we need inclusive, empathetic leadership, where the employee is more at the heart, more at the center. So if I were to give some key messages to senior leaders today, it is that have more inclusive leadership. Give your younger employees more trust. Believe in them. They can achieve a lot more than you think they can achieve. And I gave the example of the YLAB, the Young Leaders Advisory Board. And I'm telling you, our CEO listens to 20-year-olds in the company. We have many executive leaders in our company who came out of the professional development program. They went from university into the 3-year professional development program, and now my senior VP, he is in charge of 70,000 people in the company. He was a graduate from the PDP program. All right. So I think senior leadership to really understand that the nature of the job market is changing. The nature of the young employee, the young professional is changing. And even this unpredictable period here has produced incredible change in terms of our way of working. Many tech companies in the US have said that they're never going to have their employees back in the office again. Twitter,
Right.
Facebook, those people, right? So look how much a paradigm shift we've had. So I believe leaders need to take that into account when dealing with young employees now.
Absolutely, sir.
Mm.
And now let's talk about you, your journey. How do you look back on it? And what are some of the key milestones that you look forward to?
Wow. Well, I'm now nearing my retirement from Saudi Aramco. When I say nearing, it's still 3.5 years away, roughly. Okay. But I'm in that final gliding path down to the runway where I'll be kind of, I would say, not active, but I'm in the path where I want to do a lot of knowledge transfer. I do a lot of mentorship right now, passing on my skills to my colleagues here in the company. Um, and so the next milestone really for me is going to be when I finish my career in Saudi Aramco with around 23 years in the company. I never thought I'd work for one company for 23 years, but it's been such a great employer. And being in Saudi Arabia has been such a brilliant aspect to my life that it's going to be difficult to leave the Middle East, honestly. I feel that I'd like a future that still continues helping young professionals. So I'd like to continue with my coaching, my mentoring, especially perhaps in the Middle East and also in the Indian subcontinent. So I'm exploring some opportunities right now to maybe help me do that.
Yes, yes.
So my values will still remain the same. I still want to be someone who influences other people to become the best versions of themselves. I've been extremely lucky in my life, extremely lucky, and combine that with a bit of hard work that I've been able to do so many things. I mean, as a kid, at a very young age, I wanted to become a pilot. That was my passion. And and from the that stand-up comedy show that I won, I had this attitude that whatever I think, I can do it. So, cut a long story short, by 16, I was flying planes, and and later on, I had a private pilot's license. Have a can-do attitude. I would really urge your listeners and I did a talk in London a little while ago to 1,000 young people in a theatre, and it was called "Impossible is Nothing." That word impossible is absolutely nothing. And there are so many experiences I can draw upon in my life where I can say that people were telling me this is impossible. And I'll take you right back to the beginning of this chat and to say that I sometimes have to pinch myself, that I am that same little kid who left Pakistan at the age of 4.5. And here I am in my mid-50s, by the grace of God, working for such an amazing company. So life is an adventure. Go live it.
Absolutely. So this is such an extraordinary story. And your story shines a light on so many aspects of life that it is just amazing.
Thank
It
you.
has been wonderful talking to you today. I'm so thankful that you took out some time for this conversation. And I'm sure our viewers, our audience will find so much value in this discussion. I'm very confident about that.
Garima, the pleasure has been all mine. And you're a wonderful interviewer. And I think you got a lot out of me from this interview. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I wish you and Energy Dais all the very best for your futures.
You're very kind, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.